Hey now, Brawlers, it's time for another Board Game Brawl review with Nick Minahan, sponsored by BoardGameBliss.com. Hey now, today we're going to take a look at the newest expansion for Eldritch Horror. It's called Strange Remnants. This is another small box expansion like the first expansion, which was Forbidden Lore, and the last one was called Mountains of Madness, and that was a huge big box expansion that was, I think, the same price as the original base game. And if you're not aware that you're new to the channel, Eldritch Horror is one of my favorite games. It completely killed any desire I had to play Arkham Horror ever again. I didn't really like that game to begin with, but this game is amazing. It's in my top 5 games of all time. At least it was last year. This year, who knows? Now, the Strange Remnants expansion, just like the previous small box Forbidden Lore expansion, adds a new ancient one for you to fight. This time it's called the Ziggy, which is kind of a weird thing. It's like this portal is opening. It's really different than all of the other ancient ones because you're not just having a giant enemy pop out for you to kill. If the sheet flips, it's different. I'm kind of assuming you have prior knowledge of Eldritch Horror if you're watching this. And there's also 4 brand new investigators in the box. There's a bevy of new cards that you can shuffle into all of the decks, like the Mythos deck, the Portal Encounters deck, all the different Location Encounters decks. There's new items. There's new unique assets, Relic unique assets, Adventures, Prelude cards, the return of the Focus action, just lots and lots of stuff. Let me go ahead and give you a brief, hopefully brief overview of all the stuff you can find in this expansion. Then we're going to come back. I'll let you know what I think. Alright, so this is everything that comes in the new Strange Remnants expansion for Eldritch Horror. And the first thing I'm going to knock out right away are all of these encounter cards that are up here. Now, these are obviously, and Mythos cards as well, Mythos and Portal cards and different encounter cards. You have the city, specific city encounter cards, and the generic wilderness city and sea lane encounter cards. And these are just extras. It's very easy. You shuffle these right into the existing decks. You never have to take them apart unless you really want to for some reason. Some of them are themed particularly to the cosmic Sigi that is the main enemy, the main ancient one that you have to fight in this expansion. However, I'm not going to show you any of the other sides of these cards because I think that part of the fun of the game and part of the longevity of the game is stumbling across these new little blurbs of storyline on the other sides of each of these cards, and I just don't want to ruin it for you. But needless to say, I'm sure you know, if you're watching this, how Eldritch Horror works. They work exactly the same way. When you have an encounter, you flip over the cards, you read the appropriate thing. In the case of the Mythos cards, you build up the deck the same exact way. You just have more Mythos cards to add into the mix. This being an H.P. Lovecraft Cthulhu themed game, we're going to go ahead and start off with the main point here and talking about the new ancient one that you have to fight in the game, which is very, very odd. The Cosmic Zigi here. And what this basically is it's not so much that you're trying to fight a great old one in particular. It's actually like Azathoth who's about to awaken, and when the sheet flips over, it's not that like with Cthulhu, where Cthulhu just pops up on the board and now you have to kill him. No, it's not really like that. It's a bit odder than that. In fact, it's very easy for the sheet to flip over because as soon as you complete 2 of the mystery cards, and here are the mystery cards, and just like what I was saying before, and I'm not going to show you them just so I don't want to spoil any of the blurbs of story, but they have a lot of the same kinds of things. Well, there are some little twists to that, but you complete the mysteries. If you complete 2 mysteries, then you will immediately flip over the sheet. Also, whenever the omen track moves onto the red sign, which is like I think the comet sign, then you're going to put one of those little Eldritch Tentacle tokens onto it. If there's ever 3 of them on that omen sign, then you're also going to flip the sheet. Also, you'll notice, just like with all the other ancient ones, their cultists have their own special ability. In this case, it's their horror is equal to the number of Eldritch tokens on the red space of the omen track, and their toughness is equal to that number +1. Then you'll build up the Mythos deck the same exact way. And of course, just like the other ancient ones, the cultists have a little bit of a different special ability. In this case, you're going to take the number of Eldritch tokens on that red space of the omen track, and their horror is equal to that number, and their toughness is that number +1. But when you meet one of those conditions I just listed, this sheet will flip over. And again, the normal condition of the Doom track hitting 0 is also going to kill you. But when the portal opens, which is the other side of the sheet, then what you have to do in order to win this is put clues on this sheet equal to the number of investigators. At this point, you can no longer solve mysteries to win the game. However, any mysteries you were able to solve before you flip the sheet helps you out because you're allowed to put that many extra clues onto the sheet. But the only way you can win now is by putting that many clues onto the sheet. And to do that, you need to have special Sealing the Portal encounters, which is a special deck of cards that comes with the Sigi Ancient one, and that's going to correspond to this deck. You're going to have this deck, which is a lot like the Expedition deck, in that each of these cards has a different location on it that's going to determine where this roving Mystic Ruins symbol is going to go. So when you get to one of those, you can have a Mystic Ruins encounter, and you can have a special Sealing the Portal special encounter if you go to where the Mystic Ruin encounter token is. So you kind of ignore those for this particular case and take one of the Sealing the Portal cards instead. If you can successfully complete that, it's going to let you put clues onto the mystery, and you have to have a certain number of clues in order to win. But of course, time is still ticking down, and whenever one of the reaction symbols pops up on the Mythos cards, if there are no gates on the game board that correspond to wherever the current omen is, you advance the omen by 1. Also, because the game kind of wants you to play it all out to the end, to the bitter end. In this particular case, unlike most, I think all of the other ancient ones perhaps, when you flip the sheet over at this point, if your character dies, the player is not eliminated. You're allowed to bring another player back into the game. Some other things involving the Sigi. You have these Fortifying the Barrier special cards. Now, these are going to correspond to at least one of the different mystery cards that you're going to try to solve, in which case it'll say, draw one of the Fortifying the Barrier cards, and you have to try and resolve that encounter in order to try and advance this mystery. Much like in the Mountains of Madness expansion, you have adventure cards and an adventure token, which will correspond to them. You'll flip over the top adventure card, and it will give you a special mission that you can complete in order to keep advancing through the different chapters of the adventure cards by going through like 1 to 2 to 3 to 4. And these will give you special bonuses and may even help you advance whatever the current mystery is. It'll tell you to put the adventure token on certain spots, and you'll have to go to those particular spots in order to help go through the adventures. The Prelude cards, you're going to draw a Prelude card either at random or by choice at the beginning of the game, and it will give you a special setup. In fact, and again, this is just like Mountains of Madness, there's one particular Prelude card that corresponds to the ancient one that's in this game in Cosmic Alignment. You can actually use it if you're not playing with the Sigi, but it has special effects if you do. Like in this case, it forces you to, you can each start with like a unique relic, which I'll get to in a moment. And also, you have to start off with an Eldritch token on the red omen, the red symbol of the omen track. But you have other cards like Dark Blessings, which is really interesting because it forces each player to start with either a Dark Pact or a new agreement card, which I'll also show you in a moment. The Coming Storm, which is like having a really nasty Mythos card kick off right at the beginning of the game. And, of course, the Dunwich Horror. So, sorry, I hate to break it to you, there's not going to be a Dunwich Horror expansion. I suppose this card kind of takes the place of it and has special effects if Yogg Sothoth is the ancient one that you're playing against. Again, I don't want to go into too much details with these because I don't want to ruin the story blurbs for you. The game comes with some extra health and sanity tokens, but it also comes with focus tokens. And if you don't have Mountains of Madness, I don't think they were in Forbidden Lore. I think they were just in Mountains of Madness. Then you may not know what the focus tokens are. This is a new action that the investigators can take. They can spend an action in order to gain a focus token, and they can only have up to 2 focus tokens at any point, unless they have some other kind of special effect going on. And there are some special things you can use the focus for, but generally speaking, it's kind of like when you have a clue, you can spend a focus token in order to re-roll one of your dice. But like I said, sometimes you'll be able to do some special things with them. I'm actually going to save the investigators for last, so we'll end on a positive and hopeful note. There are new monsters in the game. There are, of course, more cultist tokens. You have some new epic monsters like the Spawn of Azathoth, and I'm going to mispronounce this, the Gotsnot. That's probably how you actually pronounce it, by the way. You have Star Vampires and Servant of the Outer Gods, and a werewolf, which kind of seems out of place. More cards. You actually have little cheat sheet cards. These were also included in Mountains of Madness. I don't think they were in the base game, but it's been so long I can't really remember. But in any case, these will actually describe the focus action as well. And of course, there are new items, new artifacts, new unique assets, which were another thing from Mountains of Madness and perhaps Forbidden Lore. I can't remember. I'm sorry. New spells and new conditions. And I'll actually show you a few of those without showing you the backs of them because they're pretty cool. So just to show you one of the coolest artifacts, there's only like 4 or 5 artifacts that come with it, but the Khopesh of the Abyss is really cool. You get +5 to strength during your combat encounters, and once per round when you defeat a monster during a combat encounter, you may move to the nearest space containing a monster. You just teleport to the nearest monster to kill it, which I think is pretty cool. Then you've got other unique asset cards. These are actually relics. These are a new thing in this set. One of the Preludes actually has you start with them, and you can gain. And some mysteries also have you gaining them as well, and being able to manipulate them and flip them over to their other storyline side and special effects side will actually advance some mysteries. Some cards don't really do much of anything, like the Mysterious Idol. When you gain this card, you just gain a clue, and then you have to wait for a reaction in order to flip it over. Then you have the Stone Calendar. When you gain this card from the deck, you may move the Omen counterclockwise by 1 without advancing Doom. Then you just wait for a reaction to flip it. I can't. It's not reaction. I forget what it's called. You have task cards, which were another thing introduced in a previous set, like Prayer, which is that when you perform a rest action, you can beseech a higher power by testing your will, and if you pass, you put an Eldritch token on the card, then flip it over, and it will do certain things based on the Eldritch tokens on that card. Exploring the ruins and other tasks whenever you resolve one of the expeditions or mystic ruins encounters. Here's one of the weapon relics. This one's really cool. The Ancient Sword gives you +3 combat, and when you defeat a monster, you can flip it over, and it will have some special effects like giving you focus or things like that. Lots of new regular assets. You've got a Holy Spear, which gives you +4 during combat. Handcuffs, which one of the characters starts with, which is really interesting because before resolving the strength test during a combat encounter, you can spend a focus to defeat a monster that only has a toughness of 2 or less automatically. One of the allies, the Agent of Secrets, gives you a lore and perception. You can reroll 1 die when making one of those tests. The Azure Blade gives you either 2 strength or 2 lore during when you're resolving either combat or spells. The Tome of Secrets, once per round, you may spend a focus in place of spending a clue, which is really, really cool, actually. Because it's really easy to get focus, but not so easy to get clues. And when you perform a focus action, you can actually recover a sanity. That's actually a freaking awesome item. I saw that in the asset deck the asset row one time and just couldn't get it, but I digress. Specialized training, when you perform a focus action, you can consult experts by testing your willpower, and if you succeed, you'll be able to improve a skill. Ritual Dagger, also, just like one of the other items I said, will give you either a strength bonus or a lore bonus, depending on what you're trying to do. The Opus Arcana lets you gain a lore or gain 2 lore when resolving spells. Speaking of spells, you have 4 new ones. You have Astral Travel, which will let you spend sanity in order to move additional spaces, but of course when the time comes, you may have to test lore and something bad or good may happen to you. Azure Flame says that each 6 you roll when resolving a strength test during a combat encounter counts as 2 successes, so kind of sort of like exploding dice in a way. The Markings of Isis give you +1 to all skills. It's amazing. And you can even re-roll 1 die when you're resolving a test, but you have to test lore -1 whenever a reaction comes up, and it could end up being very bad for you. The Voice of Ra lets you spend a health or a sanity to get extra actions on your turn, to get 1 extra action. But this one's really tough to survive and use, especially when the reactions from the Mythos cards keep happening. And finally, it wouldn't be Eldritch Horror if there weren't conditions. And there's actually new conditions, or new cards for existing conditions like Debt and Curse and things like that. But here's some brand new conditions. You have Agreement, which is kind of like Dark Pact, not quite as bad, but can still be pretty bad and can kind of screw you up quite a bit. Head Injury, which says that when you perform a rest action, you cannot move. Recover sanity, roll a die on a 4, 5, or 6, discard this card, or if whenever the reaction... Reckoning. Is that what it is? Reckoning? When that happens, you test strength. If you fail, flip the card, and something bad usually happens. A new boon, Righteous. When you perform a focus action or a rest action, you also gain another focus or recover a sanity. And then whenever there's a Reckoning, you may flip this card, and it's actually usually a good thing. And last but not least, of course, I said I wanted to end on a hopeful note. You have 4 brand new investigators to play as, which is the one thing most players clamor for the most. So we'll start in no particular order. You have Skid's O'Toole. Skid says that you can spend an action, you may discard an item or a trinket to gain an item or a trinket asset of your choice from the reserve with value equal to 1 plus the value of the discarded asset, which is really, really useful. Whenever you roll a 1 during a test, you may also re-roll the die. Even more useful. This guy's really, really cool. I like that character. Here's my maybe second or maybe even my most favorite character from the new set, Zoe Samaras. Her action is that if you have fewer than 2 task assets, then you can gain another task unique asset. If you have not lost sanity during a combat encounter, you roll 2 additional dice when you're resolving a strength test during that encounter, and I think she has pretty good stats as well. You have Marie Lambeau, who is your influence person for this set, but she also has action. You can perform an action you have already performed this round. If you would spend or lose sanity as part of a spell effect, you may spend or lose 1 fewer sanity as part of that effect. So she's a good spellcaster, and she can double up on actions, which is just sick. And then you have Tony Morgan here, who says that as an action, you can test your influence. If you pass, you can actually spend up to 2 focus to gain that many clues for each focus that you spend. When you defeat a monster during a combat encounter, you also gain a focus. So he's a very focus-based person. And of course, he's just like all the other characters. They have their own little, if they die or go insane effects, and where they start in the starting assets. Like this is the guy I think that starts with Handcuffs. So that is essentially everything or most of everything that I was willing to show you from the new Strange Remnants expansion for Eldritch Horror. It adds a lot more of what you hopefully already love about the game with a few new interesting twists, especially if you've not already seen things like the focus action. Now, let's get to my final thoughts. Now, I don't watch my reviews of previous expansions of games before I go ahead and do another review, so I do apologize if I start sounding like a broken record, but the thing is, and the primary takeaway here, is that they would have to screw up this expansion royally for me to not like it, because just adding more of the same stuff to a game that I love, Eldritch Horror, is going to count as a win in my book. And actually, the thing about Eldritch Horror is, the more variety you have of cards, especially in those encounter decks, the better, almost exponentially better the game gets, because you have just less chance of running into the same encounter cards every time that you play. Every little blurb of storyline is more theme for you to get into, to enjoy. So having more of that stuff is fantastic. Now, but the thing is, each of these expansions goes above and beyond and adds some new element to it. First off, having 4 brand new investigators is awesome, and they're all really good in their own ways. I would say these are some of the most interesting investigators they've put forth in the game so far. And by the way, I know that a lot of these investigators are doubled up from Arkham Horror, but I never delved that far into Arkham Horror, deep into that bench, so I don't recognize a lot of these characters. I don't know if they're even brand new or not, and how well they match up to their original counterparts if they're not brand new, but I just know that I enjoy them greatly. I like the guy who focuses on focus, because I like the focus action. I love that that's there, because in just the base game of Eldritch Horror, sometimes you can just be stuck with no viable thing to do. You can be like, well, okay, I guess I can prepare to travel, but I kind of need to hang out here, so I'm just preparing to prepare for another time. It's much better for you to at least take that focus action, have some re-rolls available, and which is much better than spending your clues to re-roll, because clues are really hard to get in this game. And also, there's a lot of new stuff, especially in this expansion, that lets you use your focus for interesting things, including with that character who focuses, what's his name, Morgan, who focuses on focus. You can now get clues with that. I love Marie Lambeau, I believe, who can take the same action twice. That little thing is amazing, and then she's really good at casting spells. And there's I'm gonna blank on some of their names, but I think her name is Ava, who's really good at a lot of physical attributes. She gets the task cards, which are a really neat, unique asset, which gives you and your character alone more stuff to do around the board. And anyone can get tasks. There's more new tasks introduced in this set, like there were in the Mountains of Madness set. Really, really great. And by the way, all of these sets integrate really, really well, because a lot of them are just shuffling more cards into each of the decks and having them available, and it just works fantastically. And it's really easy to just take the Ancient One stuff is really the stuff that's the most modular, that's very, very easy to not use in all of the games. So I like all the investigators. I like the new Relic unique assets are really cool, because again, it's like kind of like having artifacts, maybe not quite as powerful, but if you can flip them over with whatever method that you need to do so, they give you these cool bonuses like you are now heartened and you gain another focus token. Flip the card back and you can keep using the weapon. Really, really great. Love those. New artifacts, new normal assets. There's a lot of interesting assets that I hope you notice in my overview. So I love having more stuff from that to choose from. The Prelude cards are really interesting. I could probably take or leave those. But again, having more storyline stuff in the game is never a bad thing. And it is interesting to win the cards that very clearly give you a bonus and a penalty, just to spice things up a bit. So you start off kind of behind the 8 ball with the Ziggy encounter, but then you get relic assets in order to make up for that. So that's really neat. And then there's some mysteries that involve the relic assets, so that helps out a lot. So I do appreciate that they're going to have that extra theme. I just don't know if they're strictly necessary. The same thing with the adventure cards, although I like the adventure cards better because, again, more stuff for you to do in the game to have fun with, and they're totally optional, like a side quest, but they can really help you out through the course of the game. So it's like, well, I'm not going to get over there to help you. There's no way I'm going to be able to get help you out and get this. I have to get that clue before I can even think about helping you. The rest of you are going to solve this mystery with clues that you need to do so, but I don't even have any clues. I'm going to go adventure over here, and I think I'm probably going to be able to help out in some way, shape, or form. So I think that as these expansions have been coming out for Eldritch Horror, they've kind of been filling in the rough edges and gaps that were necessary, especially with things like the focus action. If there is a downside to this expansion, I would say it's probably the Ancient One. Now, I do like that they're going outside of the box, and it's very interesting that it's not like the traditional Ancient Ones, which sounds like a weird thing to say, because it's like it's opening a portal, and so when the card flips over, which happens pretty easily and can happen really early on, relatively speaking, you're still in the game and you're still going, and it's not like sudden death yet. If you die, you're still in the game and you can come back with another investigator. Those types of things. But that is also the weakness of this Ancient One, because it feels like the game drags on a bit too much. Even though Eldritch Horror can be cripplingly difficult with the other Ancient Ones, sometimes you kind of need that sort of climax to keep the game, or impending climax to keep the game going quickly, to keep the excitement level up. And with Ziggy, the couple of times I've played with him, it's kind of like, alright, I guess, the excitement is kind of killed. Having said that, though, I do like the sealing the portal and fortifying the barrier special encounters. There's a couple of other Ancient Ones that have their own special encounter decks like that as well, but I think this is the time, together with the Mystic Runes deck, oh man, there's so much in this expansion, but together with that Mystic Runes deck, those things together make the actual gameplay while you're playing through it much more interesting. I just wish that there was some sort of more ultimate final battle with this Ancient One, but that never really comes. It just feels like it just goes on and on and on, and it's probably longer on average than other Eldritch Horror games, which is a problem because the game is kind of long enough as it is. So I don't know how much more often I'm going to be playing with Ziggy unless I really want to play with some of those extra decks. But nevertheless, the other stuff that comes in this set is fantastic, and it's hard to say no, to tell people to say no to this one, especially if you already love Eldritch Horror. I don't know if this is necessarily the first set I would get, but I do think, even though the Yig Ancient One from Forbidden Lore is better and more interesting, the other stuff that comes in this set, like the Relic unique assets and the characters and all the artifacts and assets and regular assets, are more interesting. And the focus action, because I don't think that was in Forbidden Lore, if I'm trying to remember. But because of that, I would recommend this over the first small box expansion. If money is not necessarily a concern, I would actually go for Mountains of Madness first, because the amount of content you get there is just staggering. But still, any way you go, Eldritch Horror remains one of my favorite games. This is just solidifying that more and more. And they've already announced another big box expansion, and I can't wait for it. So if you love the game, check it out. It's not going to change your mind if you don't like the game, but hey, I love more of the same. Thanks for watching. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Patreon. And make sure to check out our sponsor, Board Game Bliss, where you can find an amazing selection of games from around the world. BoardGameBliss.com. Thanks for your support.